Hi, my name's Brad King. I'm a nutritional researcher, a best-selling author, and a product formulator. You know, that's a really important question, and out of all the formulas that I've created, that's one I've had the hardest time talking about. And the reason for that is I'm a big proponent in education, and which is why I've written 11 books. At the end of the day, I also realize that not everyone's going to read my books, and the majority of people that purchase my books aren't even going to read them. They'll read bits and parts of them. So as much as I would love to change people's view on nutrition so that they could correct a lot of these nutrient imbalances, I understand the great majority of the population is never going to do that. So they do need help along the way. And the number one problem when it comes to metabolic disorders and obesity is that we're eating too many of the wrong types of carbohydrates. When we eat those carbohydrates, and those are ones we call high glycemic carbohydrates, or really a fancy word for carbohydrates that have no clothing, no fiber. They're basically glorified forms of sugar that enter the system too quickly, and they cause a hormone called insulin to be secreted in very high quantities. When we secrete a lot of insulin, we actually prod this enzyme that lives on the surface of our fat cells, and that enzyme is called LPL, or lipoprotein lipase. And what happens with high insulin, when we produce a lot of this LPL, is we make a lot of fat, but we make that fat out of things like sugar. So all of those high carbohydrate foods become fat storage within your body, and those 30 to 40 billion fat cells that live within your body right now and make you or make up who you are start to expand in volume almost limitlessly. So I do realize that people are still going to eat those foods that create the problem, but you can still block some of the negative reaction from those foods if you can block how they're absorbed in the body. And that's why when I put the ultimate starch and fat blocker together, I looked at the premier ingredients that would block the amount of the sugars that would become fat in the body. Phasolamin, or phase 2, is one of the premier ingredients within that formula that has been shown to help to block up to 60% of the absorption of starch calories. Green tea extract with very high levels of EGCG, the active component of green tea. All of that is in the formula with Gymnema sylvester that all helps to blunt the amount of the sugars that are going to be processed in the body. You can look at it this way. When you eat a carbohydrate, a lot of those quick releasing carbohydrates are chained together with alpha chains. We call those alpha amylases. The body produces an enzyme, alpha amylase, that breaks those chains apart, and they become sugar. That's how they become sugar very quickly. When you take the ingredients that are found in the Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker, those are natural alpha amylase inhibiting agents. They block the enzyme that breaks apart that chain to produce the sugar, so less of that sugar enters the system, less insulin is made, less of that fat storage hormone is made, and people don't create that negative reaction from eating the wrong types of foods. My goal at the end of the day is not for people to live on a product like Starch and Fat Blocker for the rest of their life, but to see enough of a reaction where their cravings for the sugar start to go away and they change their eating habits. That's my end goal, and that's what I would really like to happen. Now, you don't have to take a product like Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker specifically for weight loss. People have all kinds of metabolic disturbances. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons we age is because we have very high levels of insulin. Insulin causes cells to rapidly divide before their time, and they use up the actual life cycle of that cell. So if you want to really help to control the insulin, you need to control the carbohydrates. And if you can't control the carbohydrates, a product like Starch and Fat Blocker can help you do that until you're ready to make those changes yourself. The byproduct of taking a product like Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker is a lot of people do lose more weight, but that's only because it's the sugars that are creating a lot of that excess fat gain in the first place. Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker should be taken usually about 20 minutes to right before you eat a high starch meal. If you're following a very low carbohydrate diet, don't waste your money on a product like Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker, because that's not going to create any kind of positive reaction in your body. It's only when you have starchy foods, potatoes, anything rice, anything bread related, any wheat or grains or things like the starchy vegetables, any of those are going to break down into sugar in your body, and once again, sometimes too quickly. And that's when you would take a Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker 20 minutes before or right before the meal. If you forget and you say, oh geez, I'm in the middle of my meal, I forgot to take my Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker, it's no big deal. You can still take it even at the end of a meal and it will still work within the body, because that's what the studies have shown. It's just that it's best to give the enzymes a little bit of time so that they can be inhibited when you finally eat those sugars. Most people don't notice any kind of a reaction when they take Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker. However, what they do notice at the end of the day or at the end of a week or 2 weeks is they notice that their belly fat starts to dissipate, they lose a little bit of weight, and any time you lose weight, which comes from fat, people are always going to feel more energetic, they're going to feel better, they're going to sleep better, they're going to perform better, they're going to think better. So that's a byproduct of anything that causes fat loss. And Ultimate Starch and Fat Blocker, once again, the byproduct of the way it works in the body is its end goal is to help the body lose weight because it's blocking the sugars which are becoming fat.